I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, July the 15th, brought to you in part by Normycin by Norbrook. Normycin 300 LA is your go-to antibiotic for a broad spectrum of cattle diseases and infections. It's a must-have in your vet shack, your pickup, or your saddlebag, or depending on what kind of cowboy you are, maybe your four-wheeler. But readily available without a script for almost another year till they change the rules next June. But for more information, go to norbrook.com. Feeders up and fats down. That doesn't seem to bode well for the guys that's been buying feeder cattle this week, and talked about it on the last visit. They're very optimistic. God love them. They're keeping this industry going for your cow-calf producers and for your backgrounders, and they were able to make some money this time, except for the places like in Texas where they've got this horrible drought down here. Did see they were getting a little bit of rain down the hill country on Thursday evening, so gosh, I hope it just sits there and pours. But they really need it so bad. But we've got to have a long-term rainstorm coming in, like a hurricane or something like that down south, to help those guys out. But the heck of it is, the market could sure be worse, you know, for those people that are having the fire sales down there, and especially on the cows, which that sheer numbers of cows that's been coming has hurt your cow market some, but still comparatively their cows are selling very well, and the calves are too. But you know, on Thursday, of course, your board was down on your cattle, pretty widespread, and you know, and that you're going to have that. But you would have thought maybe that your live cattle futures would have took the opportunity to maybe hold steady and try to get within earshot of what the cash market was, because they sold cash fats lower again for the second week in a row now. And you know, does it have any desire to get close, or is there just no longs to get it up there? I mean, it's trading with a decent basis to the southern plains, which is a foot lower than the northern plains. And it just, you know, people are really getting to the point where, you know, why even look at your live cattle futures daily and try to get a feel for what's going on? You know, it's got the same relation to the price of tea in China as it does what fat cattle are bringing. You know, when it's that far off. And then it's not even usable for a guy that wants to use it as a way to market his cattle. Of course, they did do that last month in June, and then that threw everything haywire. Of course, you know, whenever you deliver on your live cattle board on spot market, it goes even further down, which made it even further away from your cash market, which all your hedged feeders were tickled to death because they got a little bit more basis. So with your August live cattle down almost $1.50, heck, Southern Plains guys, well, hell, let's just give up another $1 because you know, we're going to net an extra 50 cents on our sales. All they're doing is feeding for the basis. They do not care what the market is. They don't care if the market's 20 cents or $2 a pound. It makes them no difference, because they're just feeding for the basis. Well, if we're going to keep cow-calf producers in business, and we're going to keep backgrounders in business, and we're going to have guys have a chance to keep their land together by running cattle on it, let's make it towards the higher end. Why not? If they don't care, and your guys in the northern plains are giving big prices for feeders and trying to get big prices for their fat cattle and getting big prices for their fat cattle, let's move it up the line a little bit if it makes no difference to them, if it's just a money exchange deal. But you know, that's why I'm pushing so hard for this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act that we're going to get back going on now that we get our lawmakers back up there in D.C. and we got to get this done between now and the end of September. And you guys say, well, what are we working for? And as the guys in Southern Plains and NCBA to TCFA, KLA are all squealing like pigs because they don't want us to put a freeze on the percentage breakdown of how cattle are sold out of your feedlots. where is that level? Well, let's look. USDA come out with that information. Here's your second quarter breakdown on the percentage of cattle, and we're talking about a percentage. It's not a price that we're setting. It's a percentage of weekly slaughter per facility, per major facility. And so, where are we going to set that? Well, your pure negotiated trade in Texas during your second quarter was 8.8%. And Texas cattle feeders are just squealing, oh my gosh, don't make us hold that. We want to sell less negotiated cattle. Zero, actually, by 2026 is what Texas A&M research has found out, that we would be net zero negotiated trade in Texas. They do not care if they trade any cattle. They just want to ride on the coattails of the North and even Kansas there. But 8.8% of your second quarter sales out of Texas were pure negotiated. That ain't much, guys. And if we got Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, it would freeze it at that. And then it would give USDA Secretary 2 years to do an in-depth analysis and start adjusting it higher. Okay, how about Kansas? Where are they setting? A little bit higher than what typically they are, 16.4% negotiated. That's because we had some of our regional packers dipping down into northern Kansas and getting some of those better cattle because we were running really short of your top grading cattle, especially in June. How about Nebraska? A bit higher than what they normally do because we were negotiating for a lot higher prices because your packers were so aggressive. 35.7% negotiated sales. That's giving guys some leverage. That's enough to make some difference. That allows people to pass up a steady bid and put them off another day and ask more for the cattle. That works. How about Iowa? They're the ones that sell the cattle at the top of the market typically up there. A bit higher for them also at 55% negotiated trade in your second quarter. And of course, most of the rest of your percentage up to 100 is formula. As you see in Texas, 82% formula. 82% sweetheart formula deals in Texas. No wonder they sell them at 136 and guys in the Northern Plains sell them from 148 to 150. No wonder. How about, and I showed you guys earlier in the week, you're saying, oh, the cattle are bringing a whole lot more than that. I showed you that they're not. The cattle on the formula deal may not be bringing 136, but they're not bringing 148 either. They might be bringing 138 or 9, but all they really care about is there a basis, and did their cattle end up bringing more as a whole than the feedlot down the road? That's really all they care about, Texas feedlot areas. Formula deals in Kansas added up to be 65%, a little bit more than 49% in Nebraska. They do formula sales up there. They're still wanting, and Nebraska Cattlemen's is wanting it, and most of your producers up there are wanting Cattle Price Discovery. They still sell about half the cattle formulated. That's not going to change. They'll be fine right there. And Iowa only 17.5%. That's why they can negotiate for the higher prices, because they got a lot more cattle in loose hands, and your packers up there don't have all their needs met already. But I was looking around, found some other information from USDA that come out for last week. Last week's grading percentages. They've changed up quite a bit since, if you guys watch daily, I gave you grading percentages here a few weeks ago, and at that point Kansas was selling, was killing more choice and higher grading cattle than what Nebraska was, because Nebraska and I were running so short of those better cattle. But they've kind of got back into normal now, and they're not running quite as high. That's one reason that our market is kind of stalled out here, because they're the ones that negotiate the higher prices, and they've got a higher number of market-ready cattle there. But you look at choice and better grading in Texas, it's fallen quite a bit in the last few weeks this summer. Now under 75% choice and better. Kansas running 83.3, which is still really high for Kansas, but not higher and not as good as Nebraska at 85.1. What about Colorado? Colorado's they're 89% choice and better, your Colorado plants up there, you know, where's that third packer at that we need over there so we can see that information, their price information. They've only got 2 packers. Of course, the main packer there in Colorado is getting the majority of the cattle. They're getting 89% choice, guys. You know, it's not that far over there to go over there and pick up some of those good grading cattle. How about Iowa running about 85.7% choice, which is good, and that's typical for them. But look at the other information on here. Your dairy cattle, your dairy cross cattle, it's not those 1,900-pound old-time Holsteins anymore. It's these calf-fed, calf ranch cattle that are real high in Angus, and then they got half dairy cow in there. But we've already absorbed those cattle. Don't worry about them anymore. We've already absorbed them into our beef market. So don't worry about those cattle, but don't be thinking that they're way off the market selling. Look how well they grade, 85.8%, and that's nationwide. And there would be some of those big Holsteins in that too, but primarily it would be your calf feds, because you look at the carcass weights on them, just 834 pounds. And your dressing percentage is just not as good on dairy cattle because they are not bred for beef. But just 60.3% dressing percentage in on those. But the dressing percentage changes in those other areas of your 5-area feeding region have a lot to do with the way that they pull the hides in those different plants. And everybody knows which plants have better dressing percentage, or a lot of people call it yield, but it's not really yield because we got yield grade. It's a dressing percentage, but your dressing percentage is better in some places that leave more of the finish on the carcass, and for those that pull some of that with the hide, it's lower, and everybody knows which plants those are. But that's just some information I thought you guys might find kind of interesting there, that I was looking for on kind of a slow news day late in the week here, when we've had so much going on and all these higher prices. It's been so much fun to talk about them and share them with you guys, and I am going to give you a ton of individual quotes, feeder cattle quotes late in the sale to let you stew on over the weekend. But let's talk about your board on Thursday. August live cattle futures were down $1.47 at 135.40. It's a far cry from the best price in Iowa at 150. October down $1.35 at 139.92. Your back months on live cattle down 67 to down 135. Feeder cattle for August down 190 at 178.90. September down $1.45 at 181.62. Back months on feeder cattle down 87 to down 142. Your grains, I don't know why I'm giving you July corn, nobody's trading it, but just kind of showing you how things line up with the corn market. Your grain markets are so much more heavily traded than your cattle pits are. They're not as shallow. One or two guys can't make a big difference in there. You've got end users, you've got farmers, you've got merchandisers, you've got elevators, you've got grain companies all playing in the market at their different angle. But look how July corn backs up right here at the end of its existence. Down 45 cents, your July corn, which is the old crop at $6.95. Well, new crop, December, is $6.01, up 5 3/4 cents. But it's just kind of interesting to look at that. Your November new crop beans down 8.5 cents at $13.41. Kansas City hard red winter wheat in September. Harvest is getting on the backside of it now, but it's taking a toll on the market price. Down 13.5 at $8.48 3/4 for hard red winter wheat, Kansas City quote. Fat cattle trade, we had more trade on Thursday, but still fairly light trade. They'll need to do more business on Friday unless they want to get short bought and watch the market come back up. But Iowa, of course, Colorado was confidential, and they got the best grading cattle in the 5-area feeding region, and can't get a third packer to come in there and bid on their cattle. Iowa, 2,700 head, 16,500 for the week. Big spread in Iowa live sales just on Thursday, from 140 all the way up to 150. That's steady to $4 lower than last week, guys. It's going to be lower. Your weighted averages are going to be lower. Now look, that was a $10 spread on your live sales in Iowa. Now the dress market, $2 spread, which doesn't make a lot of sense. 230 to 232. Nebraska, 3,300 on Thursday, about 10 times more than that for the week. 30,100. Your live sales from 140 to 145. Didn't have any real stick out deals there. And 230 dressed. Kansas, only 500 head on Thursday, only 11,000 so far for the week. I mean, there's going to be more business done on Friday, but it's probably going to be at 136 because that's where the bulk of the sales were on Thursday. Had some sales in northern Kansas on better cattle at 139, but Texas sold about 600, only 6,600 for the week in Texas, and that's 136. That's a buck lower than earlier in the week and a buck lower than last week in the southern plains. Box beef cutout values were mixed. Choice cuts down 30 cents at 267.75. Selects up 65 cents at 241.91. Your slaughter has been running at a blistering pace here as we're getting back from last week's holiday week. But up through Thursday, 500,000 head harvested. That's right at 125,000 average for the 4 days of the week. That's pretty good. That's as good as we see nowadays, and that's a blistering pace. I can't really compare it with last week's holiday week, but it's 23,000 more than the same week a year ago. Your actual slaughter information come in 2 weeks late, of course. Of course, we'd speed that up with Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, but 883 pounds, and that's steady with the previous report. So that 883 pound carcass weight for your average on steers is kind of stalled out there, but it sure looks a lot bigger than what your average carcass weight was whenever I was showing you that grading percentage, but that was including the heifers, which would be quite a bit lighter. But talk about what else is going on. Livestock Risk Services, your LRP specialists right there, they've got a growing team. Look at all the options you have in mid-America there to get a hold of somebody that's close by you, and you don't have to be close to them. You can be anywhere and call them and just visit about what your needs are, and that you're interested in this. I mean, those spring futures, feeder cattle futures, if you're going to have some cattle, especially yearlings, backgrounded yearlings to sell in the spring, which you need to get that. They're like, you know, in the high 180s. They're not 190 anymore like they were yesterday, but high 180s. Be nice to lock those in, guys, and it won't cost you a lot. Depending on how much coverage you want will depend on how much the government will kick in to pay that premium. But get a hold of Livestock Risk Services. Talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Thursday, sitting at 171.61. That was up 12 cents compared to the end of Wednesday, and it's shot up there quite a bit, especially with those big sales that we had middle of the week everywhere. And then our late week sales, you know, they weren't Bassett, but they sure weren't bad. I'm going to give you several individual quotes from around the circuit, and I hope you like those. Farmers and Ranchers Livestock in Salina, Kansas had a sale on a Thursday. 3,400 head, first sale in a month. They always take the harvest break there. But really good sale, no comparisons, of course, but a stick-out sale at Salina was 58 head, 718 pound steers, bring 181.50. How about winter livestock in Pratt, Kansas, 2,100 there. The feeder steers, which were best tested, sell $4 to $12 higher, according to the market reporter there. And I mean, big-time prices in Pratt, Kansas. This is sure Southern Plains, guys. This is not, they may go to farmer feeders. I don't know. A lot of them have gone up there to farmer feeders, and I wouldn't doubt that they do. It wouldn't be any further than Pratt wouldn't be any further than Bassett, Nebraska. But 68 steers weigh 917 at $177 in Pratt, Kansas, guys. How about El Dorado Livestock Auction in El Dorado, Kansas? That's right there at the Flint Hills, guys. And that's a seasonal barn. And of course, most of those Flint Hill cattle sell direct. But whenever El Dorado is posting quotes like they did on Thursday, especially for some of those guys that didn't get them sold, if some of those direct buyers are playing hardball, heck with you, I'll just run them over here to El Dorado and run them through the sale. 107 head, heart of the Flint Hills right there at El Dorado, Kansas. 107 head, 908-pound steers right off the blue stem grass at $175. Wow, did not see that hardly anywhere direct. Now there's going to be a little bit more shrink taking them into the sale, but you can kind of manage that if you know how to handle cattle. But still, awfully good price there. El Dorado, Kansas, Flint Hill yearlings. How about way out west in Toppenish, Washington? And you think, oh my gosh, they're so far out there they can't even see what's going on. Toppenish Livestock Commission, Toppenish, Washington, sells 67 head of 918-pound steers at $168.50. Goodness. How about Paris, Kentucky? Paris Stockyards. I mean, they've got competition like crazy around there, and they're right in the heart of all of it. But man, they get them sold too. But Paris, Kentucky Stockyards sells a load of all black grass heifers right in the ring there in Paris, Kentucky. They weigh 680 pounds at $183.70. Heifers. Wow. Coffeyville Stockyards has had ownership change. My good friend Brian Little has decided to sell his Northtown barn, the Coffeyville, Kansas barn, which he called Coffeyville Livestock Market. He has sold that to the South barn, the South Coffeyville, Oklahoma stockyards, Tylen Layton and all the crew down there. They have bought Brian Little out, and wish him all the best in the world, and maybe just relax and get to feeling a whole lot better is what I hope he does. But Coffeyville Stockyards, this is the first week that they have taken over the South barn, taken over the North barn, and then they are broadcasting with DV Auction. Look at there. There you go. I guess they thought we were doing them a pretty good job on their in-house videos and things like that. But we are sure glad to have them now broadcasting both the Coffeyville Stockyard markets there on DV Auction every week. But on their first sale on Thursday here, 318 head of 785-pound steers bring 178.10. And if they continue to do that, they will get along very, very well there in Northtown at Coffeyville Stockyards. How about Mocan Livestock Market? My friend the Herzogs there, they're doing really well with their meat market, and proud of them, letting people get, locally raised beef right there, and they're some of the people that did it. When the pandemic came in and people couldn't get meat and you couldn't get scheduled in there, they did it. And they've been doing a good job marketing it too, and I'm proud of them there. But they're still running that sale barn well too, and they can sell light calves pretty darn good there at Mocan at Butler, Missouri. 76 head, 567-pound steer calves bring $218.75. At the best market, your Zoetis stick out sale of the day, which we've been doing here of late, for the market that just sticks out for that particular day, was Mitchell Livestock Auction in Mitchell, South Dakota. For one reason, they had 4,500 head, so I had a big run. The market reporter there usually does a good job. He just called the market higher. Didn't have that well of a tested market, but still had a pretty decent run last week, but it was sure higher. But it also includes your National Beef Wire top quote for the day, which was 226 head of 847-pound steers in Mitchell, South Dakota. They bring $194.85. That's your feeder flash for Friday.